Two people can walk into the same room with the same resume, the same answer, even the same level of skill, and still leave behind completely different impressions. One looks better, and somehow the room starts hearing more intelligence in the exact same words. That is the part worth paying attention to, because competence is supposed to be about what someone can do. But in real life, the brain often makes the judgment much earlier, using something far less reliable. So the question is not just why attractive people get noticed more, it is why looking good can quietly get mistaken for being good at things that have nothing to do with appearance at all. That jump should not make sense. A face should not become evidence for intelligence. Style should not become proof of discipline. Charm should not become a shortcut for judgment, skill, or trustworthiness. But the mind does this constantly. It takes one visible trait and lets it spill into everything else. That is the glitch. When someone looks appealing, polished, or naturally put together, the brain does not keep that impression in one small box. It starts spreading it. If they look good, they must also be more capable. More capable starts turning into more intelligent. More intelligent starts turning into more trustworthy. And once that chain begins, the rest of the person gets interpreted through a glow they did not fully earn. That is the halo effect. But the interesting part is not just that one good trait influences judgment. It is that after the first impression lands, the brain begins protecting it. Once someone has been placed in the probably impressive category, everything else gets filtered to fit. Their pauses seem thoughtful instead of uncertain. Their confidence feels deserved instead of performative. Their mistakes look smaller. Their strengths look bigger. The mind is not carefully evaluating them anymore. It is editing reality to keep the first impression coherent. And that makes the whole thing stronger than it looks. Because this is not just about beauty. It's about how one easy signal hijacks harder judgments. In direct interaction, you can see it almost immediately. Two candidates answer an interview question with roughly the same quality. One is more attractive, more polished, maybe simply more visually commanding. Nothing in the answer changed, but one version feels sharper. The delivery seems more convincing. The person somehow comes across as more prepared, more competent, more likely to succeed. The room is no longer measuring competence with much care. The surface trait has taken over the job. The surface trait did the work. And once that happens, the other person has to fight an invisible tax. They are not just being judged on their answer, they are being judged without the borrowed glow. The same pattern gets even stranger at scale. Online, appearance and competence get fused constantly. A person posts a take, gives advice, explains a topic, or speaks with authority. But before the audience even processes the argument, they have already processed the face, the style, the posture, the lighting, the symmetry, the overall look. And then judgment arrives disguised as reason. People say someone seems smart, grounded, credible, high value, authoritative. Sometimes what they really mean is that the person looks clean, attractive, calm, and visually coherent on camera. The argument feels better before it has been tested. And once enough people react that way, the effect multiplies. Attractiveness starts acting like evidence in public. Audiences mistake aesthetic fluency for mental fluency. Polished people sound more right. Good-looking people seem more competent. And weak ideas travel farther because they arrive inside a more convincing shell. Then it goes one step further. It does not just distort private judgment or mass perception, it starts changing the behavior of everyone else in the room. Because once one person is treated as more competent, other people adjust around that perception. They defer faster, they interrupt less, they give the attractive person more room to explain, recover, and lead. Disagreement becomes harder, not because the idea has won, but because the social atmosphere has shifted around the person delivering it. Now, the group is not simply evaluating a claim. The group is responding to an aura, and that changes reality in real time. One person gets more chances to look competent because everyone around them is already acting as if they are. Another person gets fewer chances because the room is not leaning toward them with the same generosity. That is how the glitch becomes self-reinforcing. The person who benefits from the halo effect often ends up performing better, partly because the environment starts helping them. More patience, more attention, more forgiveness, more benefit of the doubt. And those are powerful advantages. The uncomfortable part is that the brain does this for a simple reason. First impressions arrive fast and feel useful. A real evaluation is slower. It requires uncertainty, comparison, patience, and the willingness to admit I do not know yet. The brain does not enjoy that pause. So when someone creates an immediately positive impression, the mind starts treating that ease as a clue, not a complete judgment, but a head start. That is the flaw. Attractiveness is powerful because it arrives early and feels coherent. Before analysis even begins, it can make a person seem easier to trust, easier to believe, easier to read as credible from the start. And once that first impression lands cleanly, the brain begins using it in place of harder questions. Are they actually capable? Do they know what they're talking about? Have they earned confidence? Should I follow them at all? The deeper problem is what gets imported along with that first impression. Some people receive the feeling of competence before competence appears. Others may be sharper, wiser, or more capable, but do not receive the same initial credit because they do not create the same immediate ease. That is the irony. The brain acts as if it is improving judgment, but often it is mistaking visual coherence for actual evidence. And that has consequences, because competence does not always look polished. Real intelligence is often uneven, quiet, awkward, or hard to package. Some of the most capable people do not create instant positive impressions. Some hesitate, some speak with more nuance, some do not arrive wrapped in the surface cues the brain finds reassuring. Meanwhile, someone else can look composed, attractive, and naturally convincing and receive trust before they have earned it. So, when two candidates say the same thing and one suddenly sounds smarter, that moment is not just about beauty. It is about how easily the mind turns one appealing trait into a full story. And that story does not stay private. It shapes who gets hired, who gets heard, who gets followed, who gets extra chances, who becomes the center of the room before the real test has even started. Most of this happens before anyone experiences themselves as unfair. The judgment feels rational. It feels earned. It feels like simple perception. But a lot of what feels like perception is only fluency with a face attached. That is the glitch. The mind takes one attractive signal, lets it travel too far, and calls the result insight. And once you notice that, a lot of rooms start looking different. Not because attractive people are secretly incompetent, but because appearance keeps getting a vote in decisions where appearance was never supposed to matter.